everybody. We got a weird one today, for a change. That's because we're talking about QAnon with the number one expert on QAnon, now Washington Post reporter Will Sommer. He used to write for the Daily Beast. He is author of Trust the Plan, QAnon, and the Fear and Loathing of an American Conspiracy Theory. And believe me, if you thought you knew how weird QAnon is, you don't. Yes, you probably know that they think elites drink the blood of children they've kidnapped and molested and often murdered. It's weirder than that. It's much, much weirder than that. That's the least of it, folks. I think the weirdest thing is their ability to believe that stuff is going to happen that doesn't happen when and where and how exactly they've been told it was going to happen, and then accept the lamest excuse for why it either didn't happen or actually did happen. Hillary is in prison, you see, but the Hillary you see out there is a double. Or it is Hillary and she's wearing an ankle bracelet under her pantsuit. You see how wide the pant leg is there? It's because she's got an ankle bracelet under the wide pant leg. She is in prison, but they let her out during the day with the ankle bracelet, you see. How many Americans believe in QAnon? This is crazy. If you ask Americans whether they believe in QAnon, about 7% say yeah. But if you ask Americans, do elites, and by elites we're talking about the deep state and rich corporate CEOs and the Hollywood elite, including Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey, who also wears pantsuits, and of course Jews, whether elites kidnap kids and drink their blood, you get that up. It's about 15%. 15 to 17% of Americans. Now, Will Sommer will tell you all you want to know about QAnon. The storm, that's when President Trump would finally unmask the cabal, the elites, punish its members for their crimes, and restore America to its greatness. Now, that obviously hasn't happened, but there's another election coming. It's coming up in 2024. And, well, you just watch. So we've got, one last thing, the debt ceiling. That. Anybody who tells you that they know what's going to happen, well, they better be both President Biden and Speaker McCarthy. But remember, all it takes is one House member to call a vote on the Speaker. So I am not feeling great on any of this. If I were Biden, I'd be prepared to invoke the 14th Amendment and hand it to the Supreme Court. Give them 2 days. Hey, Supreme Court, you're really popular. You can either uphold the 14th Amendment, which is an amendment in the United States Constitution, or send us into default and screw over pretty much every American and pretty much the rest of the world. Well, we'll see. In the meantime, a weird one, one other last thing. Ron DeSantis announced this week, and he can't win. And I'm not saying that Trump is definitely the nominee. Say Trump is convicted 3 or 4 times of crimes before the primaries. He might not win, but DeSantis can't win, and you're gonna hear why. Okay, here he is in a diner, and I think this is in, I think it's a diner, and I think it's in New Hampshire. But the main thing is he says hi to a guy, and the guy tells him his name, and then you'll hear what Ron DeSantis tells a prospective voter when the prospective voter tells him his name.
Thank you. Crowded, huh? Good. Hey, how are you doing? It smells really good, I'll tell you that. So we'll do it, okay. Hey, Ron. How you doing? Good. What's your name?
I'm Tim Anson.
Okay.
He can't win. Well, we have a weird one today. You know, for a change. Trust the Plan. That's your book, and it's on QAnon, which you're kind of the first to start covering it, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely among the first journalists to pick it up back in 2017.
2017. And basically, the whole sort of zeitgeist of QAnon is that the deep state, the people in the government, and the media, Hollywood elites, the financial sector, are all a group of Satan-worshipping pedophiles who run a global sex trafficking operation.
Yep, that's exactly right. And they drink children's blood to stay alive.
For example, a while ago, I did a Passover Seder, and there were a couple of Hollywood elites there, former studio heads, actors, writers. And when Elijah came, we gave him a glass of adrenochrome. Now, I don't know if my listeners all know who Elijah is, but Elijah, there's a moment in the Seder where an invisible Elijah comes and drinks a glass of wine, and we spiked it with the adrenochrome, who our host got from the kids he keeps in his basement. Okay. Now, there's so many aspects of this I want to go into, because I will say the blood libel thing has some history to it. You talk about what percentage of people are QAnon and the polling of this. First of all, you would think, and my listeners would think, I would think, that, oh, well, that sounds like 0.1% of Americans who believe. That's disturbing that they believe that. And it turns out in polls that it's like anywhere from I've seen 15, 17% sort of agree with that, what I just said.
I mean, if you ask people, do you believe in QAnon? They put it at 3 to 7% usually.
Okay.
And then when you say, do you think there's a pedophile cabal that, drinks children's blood? It's in the teens. So yeah, as you said, 15, 17%, stuff like that.
That's a difference. So there is a pre-existing, before QAnon, I think, group that thinks Jews drink the blood of children. I mean, that's the blood libel from pretty far back, right?
Yeah, it goes back to the Middle Ages, this idea that Jewish people were kidnapping these Gentile children and sort of grinding them up and using their blood to make matzah.
That's right, yes. Which is white. I mean, anyone seen matzah? Oh, they take out the white platelets. They're very clever, the Jews. Okay. So you start covering it in 17. That's when Q appears, and who we don't know who Q is, right?
That's right. I mean, I think there's some pretty good guesses, but we really don't know for sure. I mean, certainly the QAnon believers think it's, Michael Flynn or someone really close to Trump. Yeah,
or they did, and then they don't. And there's a lot of movement in this, and it's broken up, and Q disappears for a while, and then when was the last time Q appeared?
I think sometime last summer, after the 2020 election, Q went away for a while. It sort of seemed like the heat was perhaps on, and the guy, Ron Watkins, who's sort of suspected to be behind QAnon, was trying to do his own thing and run for Congress. And so he sort of said, QAnon was the friends we made along the way. January 6th, oh well. And kind of tried to head out. And so Q popped back up a little last year, but sort of Q's definitely been a lot quieter.
By the way, your costume. So you go to these, you write about this. So everybody knows Will Sommer for Daily Beast is writing all about QAnon and not writing, flattering things. You're writing accurate things, which aren't flattering. And there's been some murders in QAnon of people. And you go and you say you wear a disguise, and it sounds like a baseball cap and sunglasses, which... That's not a great disguise, is it?
Well, I mean, they typically know me just from my Twitter picture. So, they don't necessarily, I usually grow out a beard as well for a few weeks.
Oh, you don't say that. You don't say that. Oh, well, now I'm blowing it for you.
Well, I got in trouble at this Dallas event because I had grown out a beard, but unbeknownst to me, another journalist had come and he had shaved his beard as his disguise. And so he's tweeting like, haha, I snuck in, and they're looking for a guy with a beard. And so that's how they caught me.
Oh, that fucker.
I know,
you got to coordinate. You got to coordinate. But then I thought they treated you, I mean, they chased you out and all that, but you weren't fearing for your life, it didn't sound like, at that time.
No, I mean, fortunately, they had the police who were there just at the event to escort me out. And so, I felt that, there were obviously a lot of people yelling at me and what have you. But, it wasn't like they were like, lock the doors, get him.
Okay, so this guy goes on 4chan. And what does he do? I mean, first of all, this is absolute genius in a way. And it's genius in a way that I just couldn't fathom how someone could attract this the way he approached it. So can you explain to me how he lays out this scenario of a storm and it's behind Trump and all this stuff, and it builds and builds and builds and doesn't peter out when things don't happen. And, what the fuck? Tell me.
Sure. So Q first appears on 4chan in October 2017 and on the sort of pro-Trump section of 4chan. Mm-hmm. And he says, okay, here's the deal. But he says it very cryptically. So he says, look at Huma, HRC to be arrested, Operation Mockingbird, this kind of stuff.
Hillary and Huma Ahmed.
Exactly. But effectively what he says is that Hillary will be arrested by the end of the month. And then there are these more clues.
This is October 2017, so by the end of October.
And when that comes, and at the time, not that many people really cared. There had been these other kind of fake whistleblower types before that no one really expected this to take off. But for whatever reason, these other conspiracy theorists say, hey, maybe this Q guy, maybe he works for Trump. And then from there, they sort of lay out the clues and it builds that worldview. But as I think you're pointing out, I mean, we all know now Hillary Clinton is serving her 20-year sentence in Guantanamo Bay.
Okay, I mean, but it doesn't happen. And so, okay, I went on 4chan. I predicted something would happen. I did it kind of cryptically. It doesn't happen. Well, I guess that's the end of me. Or no. What? How does he do this? How does he suck people in further and further and further, and none of this stuff really happens? Or maybe you would argue with that because maybe some of it happens. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's kind of part of the fascinating psychological aspect of it is that, Q really in its first days, it starts with this failed prediction about Hillary Clinton. And what do? Well, they don't say, oh, I guess it was fake. I guess I shouldn't have believed an anonymous man on the anime forum. They say, oh, well, maybe this is the Hillary Clinton we see at book events, stuff like this. That's a clone. And real Hillary is in prison. Or, maybe her pants leg, she's wearing a wide pant. Maybe she's covering up an ankle monitor.
They believe this a couple times. In the book, there are a few women who aren't. Oprah Winfrey, is that one that isn't arrested?
Oprah's one?
Yes, Oprah wears pantsuits. Okay, so maybe the Hillary that's going around is not Hillary. Maybe she's in prison. Okay, there's that. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That's nuts. Okay, keep going.
So clues keep coming out and they predict it'll become December 5th. This is going to be the big moment. Everyone get ready. I mean, all these kind of dates keep being proposed. And they use this to sketch out this worldview where, as you said, I mean, part of it is this idea that the world is run by this cabal of pedophiles in politics and Hollywood. And then the second part is that Donald Trump was recruited by the military to run for office and take on the pedophiles in this moment called the storm.
Right.
And this is this moment they all get arrested.
Exciting.
And we all live in a utopia after that.
Yeah. They go up and down. The Q following. And then I think by the end of the book, you were kind of there. It was a low point because a lot of stuff hadn't happened post the election that was supposed to happen. But I just got to ask you, man, oh man, what could be better for Trump and renewing QAnon conspiracy than this past week, where he gets indicted on stuff that Sure, you can prove it's criminal. I can sure, but boy, oh boy, this feels like something that QAnon people would go like, aha, they ginned this up, boy. This is weak, and they're after him, and I'm back. Am I wrong? Did I diagnose it wrong?
Now you're thinking like a QAnon believer. This is great. They're seeing this as kind of the deep state strikes back. It gives them this sort of martyr aspect to him. Yeah, it's been huge. If you look at the sort of the few people who showed up to support him in New York, it was a ton of QAnon people wearing QAnon jackets and saying, "Oh, I'm Q," and all this kind of stuff. It's starting to revive them. And, he's posting on social media. He posts pictures of himself wearing Q buttons and stuff like that.
Okay, let me talk about the extent to which he avoided embracing them. You point out that at some point his advisors just told him, just start saying blah, 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 blah. And just don't wear a Q, take off your Q. And at the same time, not denying them, and only in a Trumpian way. I remember the interview with Savannah Guthrie, where she asked him what he thought about QAnon. And he did I don't really know who they are, which, of course, was a lie. But he says, well, the only thing I know is they're against pedophilia.
Mm-hmm.
And perfect, it's like, that's his genius, like, because anybody watching at home knows nothing about this goes, oh, the only thing he knows about this group is that they're against pedophilia, and so am I.
Right.
So I'm going like, okay, he has some genius that he was able to not get too closely associated with QAnon, at least through that election, the 2020 election. But he also knows that they're a big part of his support. And of course, when January 6th happens, there are a lot of QAnon people there. Am I right?
Oh, definitely. I think QAnon was a big factor in January 6th in terms of sort of driving that rabble. You maybe have the Proud Boys at the vanguard or the Oath Keepers, but then sort of the mob was really driven by, I think in a lot of cases, QAnon. Ashley Babbitt, who was obviously killed by police, she thought that day was going to be the storm. So sort of the big moment.
They all thought that was a storm, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I guess. And also the woman who was trampled.
Yes, Roseanne Boyland. Yeah, she was also a big QAnon believer. So many, like more than 60 people who've been indicted. And this was as of last year, so I think that number's gone up. Are QAnon believers. There was a guy who bought a new truck and he said, "Oh, I don't have to pay for this." Someone said, "How are you going to afford this?" And he said, "Don't worry, it's on Q. We're about to do the storm, and then we won't have any more debts."
And how did that work?
Well, it turned out he may not have to pay for it because he's going to prison.
Okay, but they may take the truck.
Yes.
God damn. So they thought that was the day, that the storm, that was the storm. And Trump thought it was the day too, in a way. And it didn't happen. So did that diminish his support? You never know how people will react to these things. Some people will go, "Oh, well, I'm throwing my hands up. The storm didn't happen today." Other people will go like, "That was a hell of a boy. That was something." And it almost worked. And he's, by the way, on January 20th, to everybody's surprise in the mainstream media and America, the guy being inaugurated is going to be Donald Trump and not Joe Biden. So I'm still believing. And then and then January 20th happens and they look up there and it isn't Trump, it's Biden. Did that have an effect?
Well, that was honestly a bigger moment for them even than January 6th in terms of, because with January 6th, they thought, oh, well, we almost got the storm, as you said.
Right.
And then on the 20th, they see Washington's flooded with soldiers. There's fences everywhere. And they think, hey, maybe this is going to be the big arrest. They're going to, put all these politicians in the cages. And they didn't think, well, no.
Because they think the military is on their side.
Exactly. So they're ready for it. And that was really a moment of doubt for them when Biden, because really up until, he picked up the Bible and all that, they thought it was going down and they thought that the cops were, the soldiers were going to swoop in. And when Biden got inaugurated, suddenly the mood just turned in these QAnon chat rooms I was in, where suddenly they go, "Whoa, hey, what's happening here? This guy's going to be the president." And, someone said, I talked to, said she wanted to throw up this QAnon believer. So, I mean, that was really sort of a moment of doubt. But I think they've bounced back from it.
So help me God. Was that the end of the swearing in? Jesus. When I was the senator when Trump was sworn in, and they put you on this platform, and I'm on one step up from Mike Lee and Cassidy of Louisiana. And I say, when he says, "So help me God, guys, I'm going to throw up on you. I'm just warning you." and they enjoyed that joke and knew that I wouldn't do that. Anyway, okay. So now Biden's in, and there's some disillusionment.
Mm-hmm.
But how much, and how many are staying in, and how many also are there? They seem to be, because Q is on and off, and other people kind of substitute for him at a certain time. They seem to be they're breaking into factions, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of divisions within QAnon, especially after Q left. I mean, it's sort of like if suddenly there was no more Pope, and then suddenly you had these sort of rival bishops rising up to decide what goes in the church. I mean, in a similar way, you have people like Lynn Wood, who's this pro-Trump lawyer. You have Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn. They all kind of do this sort of QAnon dance, and they're saying, "Oh, I have the secret knowledge, just like Q." Or you have these kind of internet people, these YouTubers, stuff like that, and they're all kind of taking their own flocks, and they fight with one another. I mean, there's this fascinating aspect where within QAnon, whoever you follow, that's a serious QAnon believer, but the other guys, those are the ridiculous ones out to make QAnon look bad. Yeah, so I mean, it's like, these guys, these idiots think JFK Jr. is still alive. This is a CIA operation.
Boy, oh boy, that was a good one. So JFK Jr. faked his own death. For what reason? There's logic to this. Remind me what the logic was.
So the logic is that the deep state killed Kennedy in 1963.
Jack Kennedy.
And so Yes. And JFK Jr., he said, "Ooh, I'm not going to let the deep state do that to me, and I'm going to get my revenge."
Right.
And so I'm going to fake my death in this plane crash, and then either become Q or help Trump in some other way, and then we're gonna bring down the cabal in 2020.
Okay, and then there was a moment where he was going to come to Dallas, and then there was a gathering of the people who believe this. And couldn't you just gather them up, all those people, and say, "You're legally insane"?
Honestly, I think in a lot of cases how you could.
I'm sorry, we're going to get you help, and we're going to and if you don't want help, I'm sorry. and it's only like a month. And I'll tell you what, at the end of the month, if you're fucking pissed at us, we will give you money. We'll give you enough money so that you won't, but you have to go. I don't know how you do these things, but how many people went to Dallas to see the JFK Jr. come back?
Maybe a couple hundred.
Okay. I think that's fair. That would have been an interesting thing to try. I guess maybe it'd be hard. It'd be hard legally. Okay, so that didn't happen. Were those 200 discouraged, or did they come up with some other rationale?
I mean, a lot of them, they really were into it. I mean, they were wandering around Dallas.
Couldn't someone just go, "I'm JFK Jr."?
Oh, and people do. I mean, not in that case, but certainly they do. Yeah.
It would have been interesting if remember how good looking he was. So it would have been hard to pull off, but it'd be interesting if a really good looking guy who looked like him worked out and was the exact right age and showed up. Unfortunately, I don't fit that bill, but that would have been, I hate to think the opportunities I missed in life. Okay. That would have been, Jesus Christ. Okay, so let me ask you, where it's going now? Because, now we're facing the next election. They still believe Q. The basic essence of Q is that Trump's the guy, right?
Right. I mean, they call him their God Emperor.
Their
right.
God
so
Emperor.
I mean, he's the messianic figure at the heart of it.
Yeah. What do they call him? Epotus or what?
Yeah, Geodis. So yeah, the God Emperor of the United States.
God, Geodis. Okay, so Geodis is still around, and he's running, and
yes,
not only is he running, but he just got these charges against him. And if you're a QAnon person or a QAnon vulnerable to QAnon person, you're going like, God, they're just going. The deep state is going after him. For what? What did he do? It's not even a federal crime, or it is a federal crime, and it's not a state. And what I can't understand what the fuck the prosecutor is prosecuting on. This is just a pretext to go get him. Now I'm back. Is that happen? Did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing it happen.
You think? Is there any noticeable, thing you can point to that says his QAnon base is activated by this?
I mean, when I look at the QAnon rooms on, the QAnon chat rooms and on these social media apps like Telegram or on Truth Social, I mean, they seem to be really sort of revving up. I mean, this is a big thing for them. I mean, they love this kind of spy and the deep state stuff. But, like I said, I mean, one of the bigger things is that he keeps posting about QAnon himself on Truth Social. And so, that's all they need to think that it's going to happen.
So now he is kind of more or less come out of the closet from the Savannah Guthrie interview where he pretended not to know anything about them. Or maybe he still would publicly if he was asked, right? But he's signaling to everybody, I know QAnon's right. And the storm's coming when I win.
Yeah, I mean, he posts. It's crazy. He's posting these pictures that say like, I am the storm, or he's posting his pictures with a Q button, and so
that's a hint that he's signaling them.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it used to be a little more subtle. Like he might retweet a guy using the QAnon slogan in a hashtag or something like that. But now he just comes out, or you'd have to
because there was a time fairly early on where they just wouldn't let Q people in and told them to take their Q off, and they didn't want to be associated with Q because for obvious reasons, because they're nuts. But now it's not all he's got. But they're a sizable, I guess. And we should, again, maybe I did this, talk about the percentage of people, 15, 17% on some. And I don't know how many of those are just garden variety conspiracists and Jew haters, and how many are QAnon, and how many people are just people who have believed that for quite a while because of their parents.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so, we can look at a couple other polls. I mean, when people are asked, do you believe in QAnon? Straight up, they say, 3 to 7%. There's another one where when people are asked, do you think this moment's going to come where Donald Trump is going to confront the deep state and arrest the world elites? That again is in, 12, 15%.
That's a good one. That sounds like
that kind of breaks it out a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. Those distinctions I think are somewhat important because it's hard to get accuracy in polling on anything, but all those numbers are pretty scary. But so your sense that since the indictment in Manhattan, there's been an uptick from what you've seen in enthusiasm for back to the story they tell themselves.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think this is QAnon loves sort of incorporating these current events into their worldview, and certainly this sort of unprecedented raft of criminal charges it has really revved them up.
Okay, take the Raffensperger tape. I need you to get me 11,780 votes, and if you don't do that, you and your lawyer could be in big trouble.
One thing I'm seeing a lot, but both in QAnon and more broadly in talk radio, stuff like that, is the idea that it's a very normal thing to call around and say, hey, can you get me a couple more votes? And so, Mark Levin, for example, was just saying, oh, this happens all the time. Not a big deal.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be funny if he, Mark, could you produce one of those? I mean, it's crazy. That's, oh my God. Why am I shocked by anything? That's the thing that disturbs me, is that I get easily shocked by so much. You talk about who these people are. We make fun of them as well. We should, I guess. But a lot of them are just, there's sadness. The woman who was trampled at January 6th seemed to be having a difficult life and had found something and then got trampled. But you write in the book that these are people, a lot of, who are these people? A lot of them feel very marginalized. And there's just a lot of people who feel marginalized and who there's a lot of that wears on you. Whereas a lot of people have some form of, I don't want to say mental illness, but some people have depression or terrible resentments or the view that they've been fucked over by the country. You write something interesting, which is that you think that these people would not be against things like universal daycare or an increase in minimum wage. Were you saying that, or were you saying that if we did those things, there would be fewer of this resentment?
I think in many ways, sort of the world they imagine after the QAnon storm, is a really left-wing vision. I think I say in the book, it's the left of Bernie Sanders, certainly. It's all debts are abolished. If you rent your house, suddenly you own it, or you rent, you own your apartment. It's we're going to have...
well, that's kind of crazy too.
It is crazy.
It's like, I believe in, everybody should have healthcare, and I don't necessarily believe in single payer. I believe in a public option. If you want to get into Medicaid, you can. And the more people who have healthcare, the better off everybody is. and a lot of things we need. We need a universal pre-K so that people can leave their kids at school, and it should be paid for by the state like they do in Europe. And we can do this shit if we reform the way we do our taxes. And if people at the top pay their fair share, and if life were better. Is there a QAnon in Norway?
It's interesting. QAnon has made its way to other countries and to what I think we would think of as sort of nicer countries in terms of their social safety net. There's a sizable QAnon group in France and Germany where they were just trying to do a coup.
Yeah.
Well, that's right.
France and Germany. I was talking about Norway and Sweden and Denmark.
There's been some sightings of QAnon activity in Finland, of all places. So they're in Japan. And so, certainly nothing, I will say, I don't think it's anything like the amount of QAnon we have here.
I wish I could do a Finnish accent, but...
who would even know, I guess.
I don't know. The elites here are giving us too much social safety net. I don't know. I don't even know how big their social safety net is in Finland. That could be the most off impression in two ways of any impression I've ever done.
Yeah, I feel like we were both sort of working. We didn't have a ton of background material to work on there.
No, we should be more prepared. So Tom Hanks, they think he should go to Guantanamo, right? When did they decide that? Where did that arbitrary choice come in?
Right. Yeah. So Tom Hanks, they think of him as sort of the king of the Hollywood pedophiles and blood drinkers. There are a couple reasons.
Okay, why?
Sure. So he got lumped in for a couple things. Number one, you may remember he was sort of the first big deal celebrity in the U.S. to get COVID. Oh. And so when that happened, they said, oh, well, maybe Q got COVID into the adrenochrome supply to get back at the elites. And so when he drank that, his adrenochrome batch for that day, that's how he got it.
Did anyone go like, there's other alternatives? He got COVID.
They did not. And the other aspect is there was this guy.
I would have loved to seen that argument. Well, have you thought that maybe he just got COVID from someone else while he was working on the Elvis movie? No, he got it from the blood of the kids down in Australia where he was making the movie. Okay. But I think it's just as likely if they don't have that kind of reasonable conversations, do they?
No, I mean, the whole thing is it is so often just resistance to Occam's razor and sort of thinking, well, I mean, this is relatively
That would
straightforward.
be a funny movie is to do QAnon, but only with people having reasonable conversations like that.
I mean, a lot of times they are like
and
that.
Then
I mean,
just coming to these insane conclusions, but it's like, no, I think it has to be that COVID was made up by, who do they think made up COVID?
I think Fauci.
Fauci.
Yeah.
That is the only logical. And didn't they get mad at Trump for not taking hydroxychloroquine when he was at Walter Reed? Somehow that got out that he didn't take it, and they were pissed at him.
Yes, I mean that was a big deal because they were so deep into hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and then when, as you said, it came out that his regimen didn't include either of those drugs. I mean, it was like, well, what's this about? But then they love him so much, so they think of, well, maybe he's faking the COVID thing, and that's why he didn't have to take it, stuff like that.
Oh God. What happened to us as a country? This is going to continue in other forms, not just QAnon, but I mean, you say this also at the end of the book, that this is part of America that's just going to continue. And how much of this, of course, social media. I mean, you talk a lot about Facebook in this, and Facebook really encouraged people, really sent this stuff to people to keep them engaged and keep them on. That's one of my big beefs with the social media companies, which is they have these algorithms, and then when they send the stuff to people, they go like, we don't know what we're sending. No. Your algorithms know more about everybody who's on Facebook than they know about themselves. And their algorithms know what you are is going to appeal to you, and what's going to get you engaged and keep you engaged and turn you toward the material that's going to continue to engage you, which is going to get more and more weird, radical. That's right?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, all these social media companies, in the case of Facebook, they had this internal study where someone made an account and just favorited Melania Trump and Donald Trump's pages. And suddenly Facebook started saying, oh, man, well, I mean, maybe it's not wrong, but the algorithm started saying, well, if you like Trump, you're going to love QAnon. And so really starting to push them towards it.
Exactly. And that's wrong and evil and dangerous. And you kind of wonder, how do you control that? And, there's this Section 230. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's the Section 230 was basically put in the Internet Decency Act, like in 1995 or something. And it was basically say these platforms should put out anything on the platform is they're not a publisher. They're just a platform. So no one can go after them for stuff they put on the platform because they're not publishing it. It's a platform. And this is going to increase this First Amendment stuff. And so everything will get out there. In the meantime, you've had a genocide in Myanmar because of this. And I don't know what the solution is, because if you say these platforms have to take off anything that could lead to this, then to be safe, they'll just take off anything, I guess, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a really complex question. I mean, certainly when, for example, they kicked QAnon people off of Twitter or YouTube, I mean, you definitely saw a decrease, I think, in QAnon recruitment, and in the case of Twitter, their ability to harass whatever celebrity they thought that day was drinking children's blood. At the same time,
that was their choice.
Yes.
In other words, the government didn't make them do it. And also, I think Republicans in Congress aren't going to write any law that would affect this, because this works to their advantage.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's difficult to imagine Republicans, allowing anything that, would say, they would say, oh, you can't promote InfoWars or whatever. I mean, where you would draw the line there. I mean,
speaking of InfoWars, he was on board for a while, wasn't he? What a dick.
Yeah, he was one of the
God.
QAnon's first big promoters, and then he sort of tried to seize control of it, and then Q said, oh, don't trust Alex Jones, and then they turned on each other.
Don't trust Alex Jones.
It's not bad advice.
I liked when Kanye went on InfoWars and started talking about loving Nazis, and I love the fact that he made Alex Jones feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. Alex Jones would say, well, maybe you want to rephrase what you said about Hitler. Surely you don't actually mean you love Hitler. And he'd say, oh, no, I love Hitler. Yeah. And it was like, it was a great moment. It's like Alex Jones feeling a little uncomfortable. Wow. That was a moment. God. And then he got in a war with QAnon or something. Yes, because Q accused him of being an agent of the deep state himself. And then he said, no, I think you're deep state, Q. You're out to make deep state. That's a good New Yorker cartoon. It's like 6-year-olds or 8-year-olds on a playground. No, you're deep state. I think there's something there.
My dad says you're deep state. No. My mom says you're deep state. There I go. Something came out of this podcast. Let's see. So, Sidney Powell gets involved. She's looking good now, isn't she?
I mean, yeah, so she becomes sort of, obviously she's a hero to the Q people. I mean, she was at the famous press conference where Rudy had all the, the eye makeup flooding down his face.
It wasn't eye makeup and it wasn't hair dye. It was some kind of, I actually researched this a little bit. It was some kind of thing he just put on his hair to make it darker, but it wasn't hair dye. And so it was subject to this kind of running. And which the thing that I never hear people comment on, they comment on that and how ridiculous it looks. What I've never heard commented on is I think it's the first time in history that's ever happened. Have you ever seen that before?
No, I never have.
Okay, so beyond the fact that it looks ridiculous and it's hilarious and they're lying through their teeth, it's the first time that's ever happened. I just love that. Okay, so we've covered JFK Jr. I'm pretty sure he's gone. Did we do Pizzagate?
No, not really.
Okay, so Pizzagate is sort of the first. This is after the 2016 election, and it's been flying around that there is I think people know this, that at this Comet Ping Pong, which I've been to, and it's great.
Yeah. And
they have ping pong there for kids to play, and they have pizza. And they don't have a basement. But supposedly, there's a basement down there where they, torture kids to make this adrenochrome. So this idiot drives in from where?
North Carolina.
North Carolina in a truck, I guess. I don't know.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and comes to save the children. How many shots does he fire?
I'm not sure exactly. A couple.
Which is weird. What's he firing at? Anyway.
I think he was trying to blow the lock off a door.
Oh, okay.
He was like, this probably leads to the basement. Boom, boom, boom.
Okay, that's bad. It's not shooting at someone.
Yes.
So how long is he in prison for?
Well, he's out now, so
he's out.
He got a couple years. Yeah.
He was obviously. Has he said, "Oi, was I an idiot?"
Well, as he was being dragged away by the cops, he said, "I guess my intel wasn't 100%."
I guess my intel wasn't 100%.
That's one way to put it.
He doesn't seem like he was former Army intelligence, though. He was just a guy. His intel wasn't 100% correct, but it'd be interesting to see if his views have changed about the basic outline of things.
Yeah, well, I know reporters have gone down to North Carolina and tried to get him, but unfortunately he won't comment on it, but yeah, certainly. I mean,
that's probably smart. He's just gonna piss somebody off, Just let him live his life. He made a mistake. People make mistakes. He just didn't get his intel right. So, okay, tell me your thoughts about where this is going, where it's been and where it's going in terms of just the arc of this election coming out, this presidential coming up, and then just the future of the country post that. I'm not asking you to predict the future. I'm just asking you to say what your fears are, what your thoughts are, what your hopes are, maybe.
Sure. I think in terms of the election, I think we're going to see a resurgence of these conspiracy theories, whether it's under the QAnon banner or, I think this movement in the past, as we were just talking about, it's Pizzagate was sort of a precursor to QAnon. Then after the shooting, it became kind of toxic to be a Pizzagate person anymore. There were lawsuits, all this kind of stuff. And then it went underground for about a year and reemerged as QAnon. And so I think the QAnon branding has been pretty tarnished. I think the average person now knows that is a ridiculous thing. So Q said, well, don't call yourself a QAnon person anymore, but you can keep talking about the adrenochrome. And so I think that stuff is going to be with us for a while. And, it'll, I think, have a resurgence in the election. But maybe the good news is that a lot of these QAnon people are losing elections. We've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course. But in 2022, one of the JFK Jr. guys organized a coalition of candidates to run for Secretary of State in battleground states, and they won the Republican nominations in a lot of states, but they were all defeated in the general.
Isn't that great?
That's a bit of good news.
That was a very good sign that all those election denier secretaries of state, not all of them, I guess, all over the country, but the ones in the battleground states, boom, 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 boom. And people did not like that. My wife said this the day after the election. People just said, stop it. And it's just, you can say stop it, and they still took the House, and they still have QAnon people in the House, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. Any other QAnons in there?
Those are like the big believers. Some of them, Louis Gohmert, for one, went to a QAnon convention, the one I got bounced out of. But certainly in terms of the ones who have like really supported QAnon, it's those two.
Yeah, Taylor Greene just at the day Trump was indicted started the pedophile stuff again.
Oh yeah, she was deep in it. She was, obviously we all know she was talking about the space lasers, and she was like very much a big QAnon person. Yeah,
space lasers though is that part of QAnon?
Yeah,
it's Jewish bankers, I guess.
It's part of QAnon, and then you can believe it even if you're not into QAnon. Is the idea sort of that all these wildfires are not global warming or anything like that, but it's satellites that are setting these fires to make us all think global warming's a real thing.
Yeah, that was the Rothschilds. Mm-hmm. And that's the irony of that. It was Soros who did that.
Yeah, people got that one all wrong.
Yeah, come on. If you're going to get the Jewish banker, get the Jewish banker right. I think that she should have been denied her committee assignment because of that. This is going to continue, but is it going to grow through the campaign? Is it going to be a factor in this campaign, a big factor in this campaign?
Certainly, I think in the primary, it's super interesting to me that Trump seems to be gearing up to smear DeSantis as a pedophile. He's posting these pictures of DeSantis partying with underage girls and saying, our beloved Ron couldn't be right. Which sort of seems like laying the groundwork for kind of a QAnoning of DeSantis.
Aren't there just loads of pictures with him with Epstein, with Trump with Epstein? Jesus Christ. I don't know if that's going to work.
But that's when, Al, you need to understand that he was going undercover. That's what the QAnon people think, is that he was going undercover to blow the lid on Epstein at the time.
Yeah. It's funny how he didn't blow the he was waiting just one more piece of evidence. So, sorry. This to me is solidified support around Trump. You even have Republican, office holders who have gotten themselves to say something at least skeptical about Trump in the last few months. mildly, now get angry at these charges. And I just have the feeling that this is no doubt helping Trump. Last in 16, it was all these Republicans running for 10 or 11 Republicans, and all of them saying, I'm not going to attack Trump. Trump ain't getting the nomination. He's Trump. I want to be the guy who comes in second. I want to be the guy who inherits Trump's people. And it feels like that might be happening again. And then, that's not a large percentage of the American people anymore, as large. But Jesus, anything can happen. And then if, God forbid, he should be elected in 24, it's all over, right?
I would say so. I mean, I think his people, we've seen this reporting that the people around him think they've learned a lot about purging the so-called deep state, all that. One thing I think is interesting is how cowed Ron DeSantis has been after these indictments came out, where initially he said, well, I don't know. It's probably not great to be paying off a porn star for hush money. I'm not in that situation. Then when it became more serious and he got this Republican backlash, he said, all right, well, we just won't extradite him. We'll do a constitutional crisis and all this. And then, obviously Trump avoided that. But I mean, I think if Trump's reelected, I think, it's not great. I mean, I think they have big plans. They call it knowing what time it is, which is sort of like parentheses, time to institute a dictatorship.
Yeah, I like that. There are code words or code phrases that they use a lot. Can you recall one or two that mean something really scary?
Sure. Well, I mean, in the case of QAnon, I mean, like I said, when they talk about the storm, I mean, they're really talking about, executing all of his enemies. I mean, they talk about their big slogan is where we go one, we go all. And so you'll see that. And there's sort of this plausible deniability where, in the case of the storm, Alan West, the chair of the Texas GOP, said, OK, we're making the party slogan, we are the storm. And then you say, you mean like the QAnon thing? And he goes, oh, no, not like that at all.
Yeah, we're not very imaginative. So we're going to copy it.
Yes.
But it's not the same thing. Oh, and everyone goes, yeah, that makes sense. What is, okay. They're around and probably building again. They go up and down, right? They're kind of up and down.
They do, and it's for example, after when the pandemic started, they really surged back because suddenly this was a thing.
I mean,
yes.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly. With the pandemic, they sort of surged up because all these people they needed answers, and they found QAnon. Or after Jeffrey Epstein died, that was a big recruitment moment for them. So whenever there's kind of a big weird thing in the news, that ends up being a big moment for QAnon.
Also, they're very anti-mask because members of the elites could hide themselves.
Well, they could traffic children with that because they would say if a child's wearing a mask, you won't be able to see that they're saying, I'm being trafficked, rescue me.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Gee, thanks. Will, thank you. This has been more fun than I thought. When I went in, I just went, oh, God, this is so disturbing. This is really disturbing. But it's if you take it right, it's good stuff to know. It can be disturbing, but it can be if you have a dark sense of humor, folks, this is the book for you. Thanks, Will. Stay safe.
Thanks, Al.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening. That beautiful music is by Leo Kottke, the great Leo Kottke. I want to thank Peter Ogburn for producing this podcast. We'll talk again next week.